I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Inevitable, that podcast where the Ouija board is the most powerful device known to man, because this week we watched The Deceivers.
Written by Matthew Graham.
Directed by Nick Horan.
And aired on December 15th, 2015.
You know, I was thinking this week, like, did we ever actually look up how to pronounce Nick Horan's name? Like, is it actually Nick Horan, or is it like Nick Horan? Or, like, have I just been flying on this made-up pronunciation for a year without us ever actually verifying it? I don't remember.
Yeah, I think it's that one.
Great.
The one you just said. Well, I mean, I know, like, if flack is what we're going to get, then it's going to be for my pronunciation of Matthew Graham, like, because the American pronunciation of Graham, we had this when we watched Doctor Who with Graham and Ryan as well. Like, British people are not fond of like the American pronunciation of the name Graham. Like, it apparently sounds wrong to them. You might have some of this, just being South African, but like, British people say the name Graham, and then like I say that exactly as I hear it, which is Graham, and they're like, no, that's wrong. And I'm just like, what? Like, what am I saying about that? That's wrong.
Yeah, you need to accentuate the second syllable a little more. Graham.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly, like, they describe it as just hearing it as, like, Graham, like Gram. So, I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, there's an HA in there. It needs to be Graham. Graham.
Anyway, speaking of voices and pronunciation, if my voice sounds a little weird during this episode, and by weird I mean like an octave lower, it's probably because I woke up this morning and had the same sensation that I had like 3 years ago when I had strep throat, and I kind of feel like I'm developing strep throat again as we speak.
In the middle of a pandemic, getting strep throat. In the middle of I say the middle of the pandemic, implying that like we haven't thought we were at the middle for the past 2 years continuously.
I know, time traveler from like 2050, middle. You're at the beginning.
No, please don't put this cursed information on us, Keon. Oh God.
Year 3, baby.
Great. Yeah. Lest we forget that it's been like 2 years since we started recording remotely on this podcast and just never stopped because, well, we couldn't, I guess.
Yeah, we were too hooked on the thrill of remote recording.
Yeah, we were too hooked on that thrill of starting Skype up and wondering if it was going to work first time or not. That dopamine hit when it works first time was just, Oh, geez. Oh, God. Okay.
So, Childhood's End, episode 2.
Well, I read another, like, behind-the-scenes article, as I said I would.
Oh, nice.
As I promised I would last week. I'm actually sticking to my word here.
Yeah, I mean, as you can imagine, I promised to do the same and didn't fulfill on it, so this is all you.
Nice. Yeah, Keon is really endearing himself. If this is anybody's first episode of the podcast, Keon's really endearing himself to the audience. Wakes up with like strep throat potentially, admits that he promised to do something but then didn't.
Well, that's a very cynical thing to say. It was like, You wake up with, I don't think this is strep throat, it's just the same feeling, but like you wake up, not feeling well, and the idea is that people hold it against you like it's somehow my fault. Like, oh, you're sick? Well, screw you, like, hope you never get better.
Yeah, how dare you? How dare you have the audacity to be sick on this podcast?
Well, anyway, yeah, let's just go into what this
okay, yeah. So this article I read was, I guess, actually originally appeared in an issue of Starlog in 1981.
Oh, damn.
And it kind of details, it's an interview with Phil DeGare. God, I'm probably saying that wrong, but whatever. Who was like the producer who was really working on adapting this to, at Universal when the whole rights thing went down. And he mentions like, oh yeah, it was like 2 years before Star Wars. So we really didn't have any idea, like when we were doing this, what was going to be necessary to translate a story like this to screen. And interestingly, he mentions that, and I guess this idea didn't originate with this TV show, because I thought it maybe might have, is that, like, Phil mentions that one of the things they had to crack in the script was, and one of the things that did get cracked by the guy who wrote the script, the adaptation, was that they made Milo a character who was present throughout the whole story instead of just in the second half. Which is obviously something that they're doing here. We mentioned last week that the series opens with the Milo analog character, now renamed Jan. Oh, sorry, the other way around, Jan, now named Milo. Sorry, this article refers to him as Jan. I'm referring to him as Milo, just for clarity for the analog in this TV show.
They seemingly for no reason renamed the characters. Like George gets renamed to another nondescript name, like Jake. Like, it's just why, why.
So apparently that was something that they came up with when they were originally adapting this to the movies, so that wasn't unique to this TV show. And Phil DeGuerre talks about how, like, it would be really annoying. I guess they had no faith in audiences back then, but, to be fair, as he mentions, they didn't really have a lot of sci-fi at the time to know what the audience was going to accept. But he talks about how the audience would, like, not have accepted getting to know these characters for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then just, like, killing them all off, and then, like, the rest of the movie / TV show is just, like, completely unrelated characters 50 years in the future.
Yeah, that makes sense. That also tracks with our, like, faulty memory of this, which is that Milo / Jan was more of a main character figure.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, maybe that's just a more common impression than we imagined, that, like, people read this and walk away from it going, like, yeah, he was the main guy. His story is definitely the most interesting out of anyone's. Perhaps made even more so in this series by that very fact that he is throughout all of it and not just introduced in part 2.
Yeah, but they do some stuff in this second episode that makes me a little less invested in his, like, a little less invested in his whole arc.
Well, they give him more, like, connections to Earth, because I remember in the book saying I think he even, like, explicitly said, or it was in the narration, that, like, he could cut his ties pretty quickly.
Yeah, he basically just told his mom, like, bye, and his sister,
his sister
left.
Yeah. In this, he has his Rupert is made into, like, his supervisor at his school, and then he has Rachel.
But also they make Rupert a bit of an antagonist.
Yeah. Yeah.
And surprisingly, we thought Rupert was going to be a bigger focus of this episode, and it turns out he's just kind of, like, there. I want to talk about this at the end, but, like, did Rupert even need to be in this episode? I kind of feel like no. Like, the way that this episode is presented on screen in contrast to the book, like, I kind of think the Rupert Boyce character didn't need to be there. Now, obviously, depending how they adapt the, like, Jan / Milo getting onto the Overlord spaceship, his presence is maybe semi-necessary, but, like, in this episode alone, like,
I mean,
and I'll talk about this later, like. Anyway, this article ends with this interesting quote where Phil is basically like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's inevitable that Childhood's End gets made.
Oh my god. Wow.
Yes, I'll put the interview in the show notes because it's pretty interesting. It's got some interesting, like, how are movies made? How did they approach this in the 70s originally? There's some wild concept art at the top of the article for, like, what the Overlord spaceship looks like. And it kind of looks like a disc with, like, 3 long hallways, prongs jutting out of it, all parallel.
Yeah, I was looking at some cover art for the book. There's obviously many different covers for it. And some of them look a lot more generic than I had imagined. Probably because the book came out in the 50s, and sort of it was one of the foundational, things that, established this sort of alien invasion look with, like, the flying saucers and all this. So.
Yeah, I love those pulpy magazine covers from the 50s that are, like, completely generic, but also like the images on the cover are the most like far removed interpretation of the story you could ever possibly imagine.
Well, our version, so I don't know if we described this last week, I can't remember, but the version of the book that we both have, I believe, is that one with like it's like an eye and there's a crosshair on the eye and there's like a red, like another half of a face and it's like imposed over the top of the other one, kind of, and it's like red.
Right. I don't think we explained that last week, actually.
Yeah, I'll try and find it online, put a link to it, a picture of it, that is. What the heck is that? You know, like that's a pretty artsy interpretation.
I mean, looking at it last week while sitting here recording, I think the like red eye is supposed to be like the overlords.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. What is the blue eye like?
Humans? Question mark. Humanity? I don't know.
Humanity about to get sniped from like a mile away.
360 no scope, bro.
Maybe it's like representing how the overlords just showed up with no warning. Like, you know, like I don't know.
What? This metaphorical guy getting sniped with no warning is like what? A metaphor for the overlords showing up with no warning?
Yes.
That's a little that feels like it's stretching it a little bit. Stretches credulity.
Yeah, but I don't have any other better explanation, so I'm gonna roll with it.
Yeah, sure. Why not, I guess. Again, I love those pulpy science fiction covers that have like barely anything to do with the story at all. They just look cool. And you read the story, you're like, this isn't like the cover at all.
Yeah, that's how they hooked in their readers, I guess. I mean, this... Okay, whatever, we don't need to go into it. I was going to go into a whole rabbit hole of like pulp science fiction from the 30s, but we don't need to get into it. What we do need to get into is the Deceivers.
Yeah, so I saw the title of this episode and I thought, oh, it's kind of cool that maybe like all 3 episodes, the title of the episodes is going to be different names for the overlords, basically, right? Like the overlords, the Deceivers. But then I looked at the title of the 3rd episode and I went, nah, never mind, that's not what they're doing at all. So the title of the 3rd episode is like the children, I think. And I don't think that would refer to the overlords. Maybe it does. I don't know.
Maybe, I mean, they are... This is kind of a spoiler, but whatever, since we've already read the book and talked about it in detail. Like, maybe the overlords are referred to as children. Like, they're the children of that, like, higher power that was compelling them to do all of this type thing.
I mean, it's not even, like, compelling them. I don't know. The way this episode is set up, that the overlords take a much more active role in like coaxing human development along.
Yeah, and they feel a lot more human. Well, I guess by they, I mean Karelin, because he's the only... They take out Rasha Varric, and any of the...
Yeah, they cut that character. Yeah. Kill him. No, he doesn't exist.
It's just Karelin for the entire thing.
It's kind of interesting because in the novel there's a whole section where Stormgren is wondering, like, are there even any more overlords, or is it just Karelin? And actually, they didn't do this on the TV show, but in the book, like, it's revealed that there's only one overlord spaceship, and the ones that are hanging over all the other cities were just, like, basically copies of the real one over in New York.
They were just, like, optical illusions of some sort. They didn't actually exist.
Yeah, kind of, like... reinforcing this, like, is there only one of them? Which, I don't know, they could do more with that in the TV show. I would be interested to see them actually do more with that and be like, oh, well, is Karelin the only overlord who's actually here?
They do have the setup for that. I don't think they're going to go for it. They do have the setup for it because they cut Rasha Varric.
Yeah, well, Rasha Varric wasn't really, like... if you think about it, there was really no reason for Rasha Varric to be in the story at all.
It could have just been Karelin, but like it also like fleshed out the overlord presence on Earth, I guess.
In a way, his presence is only to like prove that Karelin is not the only one, basically.
Yeah, but it gives us a better look into like the overlord society. Like Rasha Varric, if I remember correctly, was like this. I I guess basically the equivalent of like a scientist or something like this, or like he was just very interested in or like a historian or something. He was pretty interested in like human history and reading all those books and everything. So
Right. Well, so the episode begins. They actually do play they don't play the exact same title sequence that was in the first episode. They'd have kind of a different montage of different things, I guess, but the same kind of moody "What a Wonderful World" cover plays, and they add a voiceover about how it's been 4 years since Corellan revealed himself and science is dying. Yeah, another 4-year time skip just happening in the title sequence.
yeah, with people not aging because the quality of life has improved so much. Well, they do like a last time on Childhood's End, and it's for a show that aired night to night, over the course of 3 nights. It's a very extensive last time.
Maybe you fell asleep during the episode the previous night. I don't know, Keon.
Yeah, maybe you didn't catch it, type thing.
My favorite part during this title sequence was the like golf course just in the middle of like LA that they had built, where like the one hole we see on screen is like 500 feet above the ground. It's a tiny thin strip of like being supported by columns in the middle of the city. Like, this is the most impractical golf course of all time, but okay. And as it turns out, that golf course may be like very minor Chekhov's gunning foreshadowing for what's his name, Gregson what's senior Greg? Oh, Jake Gregson. I was like, what is his name in the TV show?
Yeah, it's Jake. They renamed George drastically to Jake. Huge change. Whoa.
Wasn't his wife's name also not Amy in the book? Wasn't it something else?
Oh god, yeah, I don't remember.
My copy of the book is on the other side of the room. Oh well.
Wait, was it Maya? I just randomly flipped open.
No. That was Jan's sister.
Oh, okay, all right. Shoot, I just opened the book randomly to a page. It's all about George. Like shoot. Whatever.
Jean. It's Jean.
Okay.
It was George and Jean, so now it's Jake and Amy. They also rename... The most bizarre thing is that they also rename only one of the children, so they rename 3 of the 4 Gregsons, because they rename Jeffrey to Tommy, but they don't rename Jennifer.
I know, and they're giving them
younger one.
They're giving them such nondescript names too, like Jake, Tommy, Amy.
Yeah, compare that to Milo. So I still think of Milo Clancy.
After you said that, I actually started thinking of the Disney Atlantis movie, that Milo, just because he bears some. They have some things in common, like.
I remember in the mid days of Triple Play, we once said that if we ever ran out of Triple Play ideas, people would know the show was ending. When we did the trilogy, we once unironically watched, not for the podcast, of Atlantis, Treasure Planet, and Princess Bride. 3 completely and utterly unrelated movies.
We were gonna watch that absurdist movie from 2010 as well, along with that Rubber. The one about the sentient tire that becomes a serial killer or something. I barely remember the story of that movie, but that's what my memory of it is.
Yeah, but it was pretty bad. That's all I remember about it.
I've watched it 3 or 4 times.
Rubber being its special effects. Well, you watched it 4 times and you don't remember anything about it. That just kind of proves my point.
Anyway.
I guess it turns out that Peretta is actually the focus of this episode, or semi the focus of this episode.
Wait, hang on. Don't they play Imagine by John Lennon?
No. They're definitely playing a moody version of What a Wonderful World.
Okay, I don't know.
I'm pretty sure of this.
I don't know why I had that in my notes then. Maybe I was just, I don't know, being a sarcastic asshole in my notes. Well, because the episode is kind of, this one is all about, religion. And yeah, like you just said, Peretta is she takes kind of the center stage of the episode. And her dilemma is that her faith is being revived because the overlords uh, are acting all demonic. Yes.
Yeah, she's kind of the Wainwright of this episode, complete with dying at the end of the episode, so we don't need to worry about it next episode anymore. Well, I don't know why I said that like that.
I mean, do we ever see that she could make it through? You know, I don't know.
I mean, I guess that whole scene is supposed to be like a mirror of. I think it's somewhere in the middle of the episode. She mentions that her mother also jumped off a balcony.
Yeah,
but she did that when the overlords arrived because she lost her faith because, well, like when these aliens land and reveal themselves to look exactly like the devil, like.
Yeah, it is contrasted also with Jennifer's birth. So like, I guess it wouldn't. That part about it would be like nullified if she lived. Right, she's dying at the same time. You're getting this, you know, in the same sort of sequence. There's someone being born. So, yeah. How she dies is she just like flings herself out of a window. Or just like walks out of it or something like that. I don't know.
Flings implies like a lot more. I don't know. I actually don't know what it implies. It implies something, though.
Anyway, what's not implied is the year and time that this takes place, which is 2035. We're in the midst of world peace. Environmentalism has won. Damn. Quality of life is better than ever. There are basically no problems in the world. They kind of reframe New Athens in a way that, like, in the book, it's sort of this utopia where it's like people have lost like the sort of the drive behind like artistic endeavors and just like you know, one of the things the book tackles I think really well is that like it pairs the end of humanity with like sort of this age of complacency, right? Like everything is perfect, and because of that, there's like almost no will to live, or no, like art is dead, science is dead, all of this is dead because everything is just perfect. There's nothing to strive for. The book really
underscores that when Athens decides to just nuke itself.
Yeah, their like fail safe is that they just have like nuclear bombs, I guess. But in the show, they're...
Well, like you were saying, yeah, they reframe Athens in the show, yeah. Continue.
Yeah, in the show, they're taking a different approach to it, where Athens is like... New Athens is like this sort of intentional dystopia. And by intentional dystopia, I mean just like modern society, where it's...
It's like the Matrix, you know, where people only accept 1993 as the peak of humanity.
1999. And you know what? The Matrix was actually right. 1999 was the peak of humanity. Okay, maybe it was more like 2005, but like that...
You're like, the further away I get from the Matrix, the more the Matrix was right. Yeah, because like I think Jake wants to go to New Athens and Amy's like, they'll be crying there, and he's like, God, I hope so. Yeah. That's much later in the episode. The first major plot beat of the episode actually is that Karellen comes down to visit Stormgren again for the first time in like 5 years.
And this re-sparks this like settlement outside of Stormgren's house.
Yeah, people are like, what did he tell you? And they call him the blue collar prophet.
Mm-hmm.
Which again, like really underscoring the like religion theme of this episode. Again, later on when what's Mrs. Stormgren's name? Amy? No, sorry, Annabelle. Or is it Ellie? Ellie's. It was Ellie. I have to scroll through my list of names.
No, the names are they're generically hard to remember, or hard to remember because they're generic.
When Ellie comes out and asks everybody what they want, like, do they want a Sermon on the Mount? Basically,
they just pulled out a shotgun and been like, you know, re-spark some of that. I don't know.
What, religious strife?
Yeah, maybe. Well, so at the same time as all this is happening, Milo, who is now, I think we knew this at the end of the last episode, but he is now some sort of researcher at like a university or something of the sort. but his like program is being shut down.
Yeah, he I guess in the 4 years since the last episode ended, he helped build this orbiter. Um, he helped build a spaceship that orbits Earth for the United World Federation, basically.
So his role is sort of being changed because if you remember in the book, what exactly was he in the book? He was something similar, but it wasn't exactly that, right?
He was. I don't even know. I don't even know what he was in the book.
He was just
when you first meet him, he's just cryptically smoking on the rooftop.
I believe, if I remember correctly, he's just some kind of physicist or something like that, or like astronomer.
Something like that. I don't know. He mentions in the episode that this is like, what is it? The final like epitome of human science is building this orbiter, and they're shutting everything down after that.
Yeah, in the book, he's just some nondescript astrophysicist. I guess that is a descript. Like it's not nondescript, but like he doesn't. I don't think it's more detailed than that.
Yeah, his job is astrophysics,
and
like my job is astrophysics.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna bring that up. I didn't know if you wanted to say it because you normally don't. But that
it's normally never relevant.
I know, yeah. And that's actually, I think, in line with what the show is doing with the Milo/Jan character, which is because we were just talking about this before we started recording, but like in the book, it's very easy for Jan to leave Earth. Like he doesn't really seem to have many ties to Earth. He just sends that letter to his sister, and that's that. Whereas in the show, his character is more fleshed out, and he does have more of those connections. Like he has his girlfriend, like, or whoever, Rachel, whatever their relationship is, and then he also has, I guess Rupert, who's sort of his like advisor or whatever.
Rupert, again, the like pseudo villain of this episode.
Yeah, kind of.
Because I mean, at some point Milo goes to Rupert and is like, "Hey, like, don't you have like some way to keep me on in your private compound here?" And Rupert's like, "No, you know what, Milo? I'm gonna be the first person to walk on the Overlord planet because there's one species the Overlords haven't collected, and it's humans." And Milo just goes, right."
I know that some of the changes that they're making with this, like having Rupert and Milo's relationship be this, and then like having Rupert be like collecting these animals for this Overlord arc thing instead of it just being like a random whale. Like it almost makes the book seem like a first draft of this story, and then like sort of this is where it all comes together. Because making these connections the book doesn't have. Like looking back, a lot of the events of the book just seem like very random. You know what I mean?
I mean, not to say the events of the TV show are any less random, because my favorite part of this episode is when they just I guess the writers were like, well, how do we like explain why Rupert Boyce has a Ouija board? And then they just go, well, you know what? The Overlords did it, YOLO. The Overlords have magical powers, so the Overlords just built a whole room and put a Ouija board in it, and that's just never explained. There's like an earthquake in Rupert Boyce is in Africa.
Yeah,
right?
I don't think they ever explain where.
South Africa.
Yeah, I think it's South Africa.
There's like an earthquake, and then they run up and they're like, oh my god, there's a room here, but like to the audience you have no idea if this room was there or not because you have no establishing shot of the compound without the room present.
Well, they say like the one guy, Morgan, I don't know why his name of all people is the one I remember.
What?
Rupert's like second in command, that bald guy, his name was Morgan, I believe. He walked.
The creepy
one.
He
goes in. He's like, "Oh my god, this room wasn't here before, and now it is."
And and he's like, "Oh my god, what is this? It's a Ouija board." And so yeah, the Overlords just gift Boyce the most advanced Ouija board in all of human history. And like, yeah, this is one of my criticisms of this episode, like completely divorced from the book. Like, why Boyce? Corellin is clearly, at the end of the episode, going to use the Ouija board to communicate with Jennifer, Amy's as yet unborn child. But, like, why did the overlords go through such a convoluted scheme to get Amy to the Ouija board? Like, surely there were so many easier ways to do this.
I think maybe Corellin, I think what maybe the show is setting up is that Corellin is kind of going against the overlord directive. Because I guess we can just say this now. In the book, and probably in the show as well, the overlords are being compelled to guide these species to this higher plane of existence by like a force that they honestly don't know too much about. And in I think it was, I don't remember if it was Corellin or Rashavarik, but it was one of them. In the book, Jan speculates that they were gathering like research on the species that they help guide in order to like one day oppose the force. I say like it's the force from Star Wars, but like it doesn't really have a name or a description.
It's the Overmind.
Yeah, the Overmind. Sorry, it does have a name. So like, yeah, Jan speculates that maybe one day they plan on opposing the Overmind, and that I think is maybe going on here too, where because like at the end, Corellin gives Stormgren like hints as to why he prevented them from having children, and he's more attached in that way. So maybe he's kind of covertly going, against the Overmind in this way.
Oh yes, like at this point in the episode when they're gifting the Ouija board, we've gotten to the point where like Stormgren, Ellie has like begged Ricky to be like, what did he tell you? Like, what did Corellin tell you? And Ricky finally breaks down. He's like, okay, so what he told me was, and this is such a weird angle to take on the TV show, but whatever, whatever. He was like, oh, Corellin told me that like the spaceship poisoned me and I'm gonna die.
Yeah. So he has some sort of deadly disease that I believe it's described similar to like
it's like sickle cell leukemia or something.
Yeah, it's described similar to like leukemia, like. The being on the Overlord ship like gave him cancer or something like that. That's not exactly correct, as we find out later, but that's what he says at this point.
Yeah, I thought before we found out what Corellin had told Stormgren, I thought for a second that this TV show was going to be really ambitious and make Stormgren also like Jennifer's parents, and like that's what Corellin came down to tell him, was that they were going to have like important children or something. So I was like, I mean, they're keeping Stormgren around after his job is done, so like maybe the TV show is trying to do something with them, and they are. I mean, the TV show is doing something with them. It's just not what I thought it was.
It's just not that, yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of Jake's, I guess, children. I think that's sort of what the episode starts to focus on at this point, where like, they have this son. I think he's 9? Deepest voice 9-year-old I've ever seen in my life. But the kid who's playing him has to be
your 9-year-olds don't have a voice this deep.
Maybe he has maybe he's coming down with strep throat as well.
You get strep throat and you get strep throat. But that's not possible because we know disease has been cured.
True.
In the TV show, not in real life.
Yeah, unfortunately. So Tommy is he's having these strange dreams. This is exactly the same as it is in the book, really. He's having these dreams of what we know, because we've read the book, is the Overlord homeworld.
Yeah, well, it's the same modulo the inclusion of Peretta as a spiritual counselor, question mark?
Yeah.
Well, Jake and Amy, like, fight over this because they're like, oh, Jake wants Tommy to see somebody. Amy doesn't necessarily want him to see somebody. And they end up calling in Peretta.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I don't know. I mean, if I was Peretta and I just saw this kid speaking about going to like flaming hell planet. By the way, there's a scene earlier on, like when we first see Peretta in this episode, where she's reading a book and there's a picture of the devil, and then there's like the caption is like the devil will send a false prophet, and Peretta like highlight circles this like.
Mm-hmm.
Implying that I guess Karelin is a false prophet. But anyway, if I was Peretta coming into this home where this kid explains that he's seeing like the fire planet, and that then the kid's psychic powers like rip my cross off my neck,
Yeah.
try to choke me with it and then rip it off my neck, I'd be like, hell nah, this kid needs an exorcism.
Yeah, or just like...
I'd be contacting my local priest. I'd be like, I need an exorcism ASAP.
What I thought they were going for with this is that if you remember in the book, it's a very minor thing in the book, but George is having an affair. I thought what they were setting up here was that Jake was going to have the affair with Peretta, because like how it kind of is done is that Jake is very intent on Tommy getting help over this, and Amy is not really on board with that. And then Peretta comes in, she's providing that help, and she's on board with like, all right, Tommy, there's something wrong here. So I thought they were kind of going to go down that route, but no.
No. I think they drop the cheating entirely, probably for the better. That's the one, like that's one of few plot threads in the book that just go nowhere.
Yeah, I wouldn't even. It's not even like really a plot thread. It's just like a couple sentences.
There's more than a couple sentences. It's mentioned multiple times throughout the Athens plotline, because George is like, I feel bad because I'm basically just staying with Jean for the kids, but it's okay. And then like at the end when the nuke's coming, he's like, all of a sudden I love her again. Forget that other girl.
Yeah, yeah, all right, fine. It is like, yeah, all right, whatever.
I have a note that says the earth shakes and monkeys attack, and I totally forgot about the monkey attacking. Oh my god, I can't remember anyone's name this week. Rachel. Or like jumping at her in the cage with glowing
like
green
animals
eyes.
are freaking out, and this is just like one symptom of that. Is that the monkey sort of goes after. Yeah, animals are like freaking out. Kind of when animals do this in real life, it means there's some like natural disaster about to hit, like a tsunami or something. Like, I don't know, animals usually have that sort of...
Yeah, when they do it on TV shows, it's usually when it's about to hit the fan.
What happens next? I think the scene we talked about before, we don't have to...
So Stormgren like collapses in public on his property, basically, is what happens next. This is how everybody else finds out he's sick.
Right, yeah,
and that's that whole scene.
Yes, well, that whole scene. I think they take him to a doctor, and he kind of, he says like, your organs are decaying or something like that.
Yes, this is why he can't have children, or why they haven't.
And this is when he reveals what we talked about before, so we don't need to go too into detail. But like he tells Ellie that like something on the ship poisoned him. The book doesn't really go into the repercussions of Karelin choosing Stormgren in the same way. I don't know. I kind of like this, for coming at it from the angle where it's like there has to be some downside, for Stormgren's position. Obviously, the kidnapping was one of them, but yeah, I don't know. You know what I mean?
There's no downside for Stormgren in the book. He just, he has a nice, happy life after Karelin's interference.
Mm-hmm.
We then get a scene that's very interesting where Milo basically indicates that he already believes there's some sort of psychic connection going on here, and he kind of already posits the theory that the presence of devils and devil-like imagery in religious texts is not an indication that the overlords have been here before, but rather a sort of future vision of their arrival, and Rachel asks, well, if we knew they were coming to do good, why would we make them a personification of evil? And Milo's kind of like, oh, I don't know. Was I just busting out my Dan voice again here for Milo?
Well, so another thing that that puts Jake a little bit on edge is that Tommy, he gets better, I believe. Like his visions stop happening, or at least stop happening as frequently.
Or he stops telling his parents about him.
Right, and so they not oust, but maybe oust is a suitably religious word to use. They oust Peretta. They tell her to stop coming.
Well, but that's because she comes the one time and there's an Overlord pod flying away from the house and she like freaks out and they don't see the pod anyway, so they think she's having like a mental breakdown.
Right. She also just pauses to like pray. I don't know, just like right in front of their house.
Yeah, there's a scene also where she's talking with like I guess another priest, and this is when we find out that like her mom committed suicide because she lost her faith.
Yeah, I think we knew that from the previous episode, but yeah, it just reminds us, I guess.
Yeah, but I guess the underscoring in this scene was that Peretta tells him that like she hasn't lost her faith and doesn't intend to.
Yeah, little does she know that.
Sweats in end of the episode.
Yeah. Well, so something that kind of renews Jake's fears is that he's playing with Tommy. What's her face?
Amy.
Amy. Like knows she's pregnant at this point. They're trying to think of names for the baby, and Tommy just says Jennifer out of nowhere. And
Tommy's trying to remember someone's name.
Mm-hmm. And he just says Jennifer, and so Jake is like, okay, so they discuss this, and Amy came up with Jennifer, and she told Tommy, and they had this whole discussion. All right, gotcha. And so when he brings that up to Amy, she's like, what? No, like I just came up with Jennifer, like right now.
And Jake's like, what?
So he obviously goes to where you would, where your brain would immediately go when something like this happens, which is that your son is a psychic seer.
Yes, that's the immediate conclusion to be drawn here.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep, seems good to me. Yep. Nothing wrong with this.
Yeah, I know.
And this is when they want to go. This is when Jake is like, I want to go to New Athens. And Amy's like, but there'll be crime there. And he's like, please, I hope so. They then get an invitation from the creepy bald dude to like come. So, okay, let me back up a second. Rupert Boyce is going to throw a party. And Corellin is going to be there. But contingent on Corellin's coming is that Boyce has to add a couple names to the guest list. Namely Amy, Tommy, and Jake. So this bald guy arrives and gives them this invitation, and he's like, oh yeah, we're designing the nature preserve, and like you design golf courses. It's like kind of the same thing, right? And Jake's like, no, it's not the same thing at all. And the guy's like, well, are you turning down the challenge then?
He says no, and this is kind of set up a little bit earlier, or it might have been like right before this actually, where Jake is telling Amy that like, Tommy asked me what he was gonna do when he like grew up, like what he was gonna be like, job wise, and I told him he doesn't really need to do anything, and he's like, man, like what kind of world is that we're that we've not built, but that because the Overlords created it, but that we are living in. And so he, I guess, feels that he, even though this is like incredibly sketch, like he can't turn down the job offer because it goes against that principle or whatever.
Mm-hmm. So he just had to go to this party. This mysterious party in Africa.
That's what I mean when like I say that this is kind of less random, is that like in the book, they're just invited to the party just because they know Rupert, like,
Yeah, but at the same time, it's almost more random because, like, again, like, why did Corella need to go through Boyce to get to Amy? Like, could Corella not have just shown up to Amy and And Jake had been like, hey, you mind if you just slap your hand on this Ouija board real quick? Thanks.
Apparently.
Especially since the Ouija board they've constructed has some sort of godlike power.
Apparently not. I mean, this is coming at it from a completely different angle than the book, because if you remember in the book, them using the Ouija board to find out the location of the Overlord planet was a complete accident, and the Overlords actually, they don't like freak out over it, but there is that discussion between Corellin and Rashaveric where they're like, oh god, they know. And then I think Corellin is like, don't worry, like they can't do anything about it. Until Milo or Jan does, I guess, but yeah.
I mean, the way that Milo finds out like where the Overlord home planet is in this episode feels completely arbitrary and tacked on.
Well, yeah,
end,
it's. I mean, it's different from what happens in the book.
Well, of course. I'm not even comparing it to the book. I'm just saying, like, literally within the context of the episode, it still feels arbitrary and randomly tacked on.
It doesn't feel arbitrary. It just feels like there's a step missing or something like that, or like he takes a leap of faith and it happens to be right missing. Or something like this. But I'm fine with it. I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter.
Well, anyway, they're at the compound. Tommy like goes wandering off to look at the dinosaurs, I suppose.
He's
with the creepy bald dude,
taken
and
by,
he's like, I've been here before.
Morgan. So I mean, he's sort of the most menacing presence in the episode in a way.
It's the bald head. Bald equals evil.
Oh no, it was Morton. Oh no. Oh yeah. Okay. So the guy it's Robert Morgan playing Morton. My bad.
Oh my gosh. Wow, thanks for lying for the past 50 minutes.
I mean, I wasn't doing it intentionally as far as anyone knows, but
deceiving our audience. Just how dare you, Keon.
The Deceivers. It was actually referring to us.
Well, there's this hilarious moment where, like, so Amy finds the Ouija board room. Boyce spends the next 5 minutes going, what are you doing? Stop. How dare you? What are you guys doing? Tell me what's going on. But the moment that Amy puts her hand on the Ouija board, like, a beam of light shoots out into space. And I don't know if you noticed the clearly stock sound effect of people going, ah! when they look out the window. Because it's like it's a sound effect you can hear in dozens of other TV shows and movies, and you're just like, wow.
Okay, I think we should take a step back a bit, because there's a little bit leading up to this, which is that Jake is incredibly suspicious of what's going on. He doesn't really fit in at the party. You can see that he, like, the stuff before was kind of set up for this, or like they're both kind of the same idea, whereas that he has this longing for the way that things used to be in the past before the Overlord showed up, and nobody else really is on the same level, except Milo. So
Milo claims it. Sorry.
God damn it.
Keep going. Keep going.
He and Milo aren't fitting in. They both wind up like apart from everyone else, and they meet each other. That's all we really get at this point. But yeah.
Milo to the detriment of himself, because Rachel is throwing up obvious signs that she's into him. He says something like nothing keeps me here, and Rachel just like goes, oh, my heart.
Yeah, they're setting up this relationship, I guess.
Milo's only even at the party because Rachel was invited and got a +1.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot about that. That's actually such a messed up aspect of the episode that's not delved into at all, because like Milo personally knows Rupert. He's actually like, he's literally his student. He doesn't get invited to the damn party.
Yeah, not anymore.
He and Rachel are students of Rupert, and Rupert invites Rachel and not Milo.
Lest we also forget the first time we meet Rachel in this episode, which I don't believe is the first time we've seen Rachel, period, because I'm sure she showed up at the end of the last episode, but is her coming in and Milo being like, yeah, the program's being shut down, and she goes, are you just stealing all that scientific equipment? And he's like, I'm not stealing. Stealing doesn't exist anymore. He's like, yeah, but you are stealing it, aren't you? And he's like, while this is all going on, kind of semi-simultaneously, Peretta has decided to just like embed herself in the like tent city outside of
The
Stormgrim's
Stormgrim
property.
prophet arc. She decides to just show up as a main, a figure. She gets on good terms with Ellie.
Yeah, she completely manipulates Ellie. Like, let's not beat around the bush here. Peretta like actually basically becomes a villain for a hot second here, manipulating Ellie into thinking that she's her friend when really Peretta's just using this as an excuse to get close to Corellin.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she necessarily has any ill intentions for Ellie, but like, yeah, basically.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Damn.
You should know this, Peretta. Come on. SMH. For some reason, I also thought Peretta was like in Africa, but then at this scene where she goes to Stormgren, I think she says something like that she's from California, and I'm like,
No,
oh,
well, she's from
okay.
Brazil, but like, I think
Or
no, I think it's
New
that
York or
like
something.
Jake and Amy live in California.
Yeah. That's why I thought she was like from California, because I was like, how else would she just like casually go and visit? Because they haven't in the book they really play up the fact that like flight technology has advanced to the point that they can get basically anywhere on Earth in like 2 hours, but they like really haven't emphasized or even maybe even made reference to this at all in the TV
I mean,
show.
everyone has that's like a yeah, that's one of the more I don't know. I don't even know the word, but like everyone has like a flying car in the book, like that's
Yeah.
how George and Jean get to the party in the book is that they take their car, which can travel from like I think they live in like Alaska in the book or something like that. And they take it to wherever the party was. I think it was also in Africa, South Africa in the book.
Mm-hmm.
It takes them a couple hours. Seems like sort of a logistical nightmare that everyone just has a car that can fly and go anywhere in the world in a couple hours. But hey.
Well, yeah, anyway, so Peretta's just like embedding herself, sleeper agent style, into this tent city. Yeah, I said that way on purpose.
It's pretty damn easy too. The way she like gets on Ellie's good side is I guess two things. One, she's not a complete weirdo like everyone else, she's just kind of a weirdo. And two, she just helps her pick up some vegetables. She like drops vegetables and Peretta's like, this is my chance, and she like swoops in like, you need help with that? Want me to help you carry your groceries to the door?
She's like, yeah,
Little
right.
does Ellie know what this is going to result in.
Yeah, the things are about to go tits up.
Meanwhile, at the party, Root reveals what's actually happening, which is that he has been contracted to provide an Earth zoo for the overlords.
Yeah. That's it. That's basically all he reveals at this point, because then he continues to go like, what's going on? What are you doing? Stop, please.
A little before that, like he brings out Corellin in front of everyone. And again, in the book, this is Rasha Varric.
Yeah. Same way they do it in the book.
And
yeah, Rasha Varric.
So Milo just kind of ruins this moment by like upstaging the entire. He just kind of usurps the attention here and kind of just flings some heavy hitting questions against Corellin. I think to the effect of like, where's the Overlord homeworld? You're gonna tell me right now.
He basically accuses the overlords of like holding back Earth development, and he wonders like why. And I think Corellin hang on. He says here. Um, shoot, where he says something like the way his there we go, there it is. Sorry, I have a lot of notes for this episode for some reason. He says the way has been prepared for your successors,
Mm-hmm.
and this like everybody's kind of quietly uncomfortable at this
Yeah,
answer,
I
so
mean, I
they
think
kind of
the
all just move
implication
on.
here, both for the audience, for both audiences, right, inside and out of the story, is that like the overlords are actually malevolent and they're planning on wiping out humanity and taking over Earth or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody really knows what to do. It's not like they can really do anything about it, so they're just sort of creeped out by it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. So then they finally get to the actual Ouija board because Amy goes looking for Tommy and Jake because she now is also starting to get kind of weird vibes from this whole party. And I guess in her process of looking, Corellin just goes, "Hey, psst, psst, come in here, psst."
Yeah, like a beckoning hand from the darkness or
But
something.
actually, what happens is that Morton just walks up to her and goes, "Hey, by the way, like not Morton, sorry, Boyce. Actually, Boyce kind of just walks up to her and go, "Hey, Corellin wants to speak to you for some reason." And she goes, "Okay." And see, this is like the fact that she just defers to the overlords anyway just made me wonder, like, why didn't Corellin just like plop the Ouija board down outside of the Gregson's house and just like knock on the door and be like, "Hey, this is kind of weird, but like I need you to come and just come over here for a hot second." Like, and probably Rupert Boyce's character and presence in the story will be fleshed out more next week. I'm just kind of considering this episode on its own, like, you know, like what was the point of the Rupert Boyce character? I suppose it also provides a convenient explanation for why Milo is there to see the product of this Ouija board session.
Yeah, and he is the one uh who's collecting these animals and all of this. So. And that's actually more. It's you know, it's interesting because the show I don't think necessarily does a great job, unless I just missed it, of setting up that because in the book Rupert is like he's like a remote vet, right? Like he uses this technology to operate on
but he
animals.
does he yeah, but in the book he does also provide
Yeah,
some animals to
he provides
Corellin.
the whale, right? Like, or no, maybe I don't know, maybe.
No. The other guy provides the whale. The other scientist who's introduced shows up. His only purpose is to give Milo Jan away onto the ship, and then vanishes. But like the way that Jan gets in
Oh
contact with another
yeah.
scientist
He's
is
just like a
through
mutual friend or
Boyce,
something.
because they're both like I think they're both providing animals for the overlords, but Boyce is just providing like animals that he can
Yeah.
find on his game reserve. Whereas the other scientist is like providing like
Yeah, the book does that a lot as well. They did it in like the Stormgren section, like part one. If you remember, there's just that guy who like shows up to be a guy for Stormgren to talk to about the mirror for like 2 seconds.
There's also the guy who shows up just to be like Stormgren's like second in command, just to explain what happens to his post when he gets kidnapped. Like
Yeah,
Van
so
Hoyt
you
or
can see
something
like
that.
the show is like you know
Van Ryberg.
it's yeah, and so the show is like you know, maybe not always in the most like it's maybe not always the most adeptly, but it is like trying to I guess put these characters more at the forefront. Is the book? It's somewhat character driven, but not really. And again, it has these characters who just show up to play like this very specific role and then just disappear. Whereas this, you know, maybe as you're describing, not to the best effect, but it is like kind of I don't know, trying to put the characters more at the forefront, and the result of that is maybe confusion at times or something like that. But still,
Yeah, I mean, I really wonder how they're going to do Milo getting onto the spaceship, because now that they've set Boyce up to wanting to be the first person to walk on the Overlord planet, like it feels like that makes it's going to be very difficult for them to reconcile that with like maybe how I thought they would have done this originally, which is combining the Boyce character with the guy in the underwater base, and just having the Boyce character provide Milo that way onto the spaceship. But since Milo clearly wants that, sorry, not Milo, since Boyce wants that for himself, maybe Boyce will set this whole thing up for himself and Milo will steal it at the last minute. Maybe that's what they're going to do with this whole thing. I don't know, I'm just kind of spitballing here.
I mean, I think it's going to be pretty similar to how it is in the book, which is that, like, and it's actually going to drive home a point that the book made even further. Because what I think is going to happen is that, like, Boyce he obviously wants to get to the Overlord planet, but he's going to try and go through, like, legal, so to speak, channels, whereas Milo is just going to take this, he's going to see this opportunity and take it, just like he does in the book. And that is kind of going to mirror the Overlord's potential defiance of the Overmind, right? Is like they don't have any way of defying it because it's something far beyond their comprehension. The only thing that they can do to defy the Overmind is to, you know, wait for their time to do so, type thing.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see, I guess, what happens.
Yeah, we'll see. So anyway, they do the Ouija board scene, except it's just Karellen and Amy, and Amy's not really responding, and Karellen, you know, when Boyce asks what's going on, like, why are you asking her those questions? He says, I'm not talking to her. Obviously, she's talking to Jennifer.
Her.
We don't actually see what Jennifer says in return. It's never told to us, the audience, but as she moves around this Ouija board, the, like, sky beam displays, like, letters.
Meanwhile, Tommy is having a crisis. I think he's run off somewhere, and I think Jake is kind of chasing after him. And he seems like he's about to just jump off a tall structure.
Well, he does jump off the tall structure.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, when I say that, it seems like he's just going to die. But he doesn't. He
survives. He lives.
Yeah.
It's like that meme from Ice Age 4, I don't know, where the weasels are like, Keon's like, oh God, what's coming now? No, not Scrat. It's when they introduce, I don't know, this crazy daredevil weasel anyway. And,
oh my God.
Two younger weasels are like, did you die? And he goes, yes, but fortunately I lived.
Yeah, that's pretty good, actually. Well, so Tommy, he jumps, and then he doesn't hit the ground, though. He, like, kind of levitates a few inches off the ground.
Yeah. He becomes a little floating nuisance. Morton also witnesses this and runs up and is like, what's that? What's going on?
Well, I mean, Jake does, too, and he kind of embraces him and apologizes. He hasn't been the best dad or whatever, so...
And then Karellen says something like, my work here is done. She has accepted her purpose.
Yeah, this is maybe the most different, I think, tonally and just kind of what it is from the book, like out of all the scenes. Because in the book, it's, you know, they take out this Ouija board and it's, you know, nobody, even the people who, like, believe in its powers in the book, like, the way it's described is, like, they don't expect anything to come of this, like, it doesn't matter in any way. And then, like, this ends up revealing this key information about where the Lord Homeworld is.
Yeah, the book implies, it's not outright stated, but Karellen and Rashevarik, when they have a conversation, imply that this Ouija board scene, you know, this thing that happened, basically doesn't start the, like, cascade of children having telekinetic powers, but it does, like, key Karellen and Rashevarik into who is probably going to have the first child to have telepathic abilities, that being
yes.
Jean. And since, you know, they can never really tell who's going to be the first until someone starts to display this kind of power. And it's, you know, part of why, like, they monitor Jean. It's I mean, they do mess with the timeline relative to the book too. I mean, the Tommy character in the book hasn't even been born yet when they have the Ouija board scene in the book.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And in fact, Greg and Jean aren't even married in the book. George and Jean aren't even married in the book when that scene happens. And that scene actually, interestingly, does serve a similar purpose in that it does end up leading to the eventual birth of Jennifer and the acceptance of Jennifer as like the herald of this new age. But in a more abstract sense, George mentions that like Jean seemed a lot less interested in exploring the psychic after that, and the event like brought them both much closer together, and is what prompts George to propose to Jean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was just gonna say, like, in the show, it's far more bombastic and in your face about a lot of that stuff.
I mean, not to mention Milo watching through the window and then like grabbing a napkin and being like, Rachel, I need something to write with. And she's like, here's my lipstick. And she's like, that's my favorite shade. While he like just uses all of it to write down a character.
Yeah, so let's explain that, because this is how Milo uncovers the location of the Overlord planet, which in the book, I guess we can just briefly describe, is they just say it and nobody knows. It's like a coordinate and nobody knows what it means. And he goes like, wait a minute, could that be? And then he looks into it and it is the coordinate for the Overlord planet. So that's what happens in the book. But here, he notices, he's been studying the Overlord language, their written language. He knows all the symbols that they use and all this. And
I want to just mention here my one issue with this. All the symbols are based on constellations, and, very conveniently for Milo, it happens to be constellations as seen from Earth. But anyway.
Yeah, whatever. Who cares? I mean...
Me, the astrophysicist. Come on.
I don't think it really matters, but all right, you do you. So he sees, like... He on the Ouija board, he sees one that he's never seen before, and
in the sky beam, not on the Ouija board itself. But yes, continue.
So he sees one that he's never seen before, and he jots it down, and it's like the only out of all the constellations they use for their language, this is the only one that can that has planets in it that can support life or whatever. And so he, I guess guesses correctly that the Overlord planet is there. See,
yeah.
It does seem like this entire sequence does seem like it's missing a sort of step. But at the same time, I appreciate that it's cooler than just overhearing the coordinate.
I mean, he didn't overhear it. He asked.
Yeah, he asked. Yeah.
In that, he asked what's the home planet of the Overlords? And the reason why he asked it in the book, actually, it's more cool than you think. He asked this question in the book specifically because it's a question that nobody in the room could have known the actual answer to, because everybody was skeptical of almost every question they asked, somebody in the room maybe heard the answer to at some point and are influencing the dial. So when Jan asks this question, he's explicitly asking a question he knows that nobody in the room could possibly know the answer to,
except Rasha Varric.
An answer. Well, yeah, but he's not part of the circle.
Yeah, I don't know. I just appreciated how it was done in the show, honestly.
Anyway, Rachel and Milo go off to consummate the relationship, I guess, because Rachel finally kisses him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I guess she likes me."
It's such a medieval way of saying consummate the relationship.
Am I wrong?
No, but it's just
prove that I'm wrong.
No, but it's it's such an old term. By the way, when they first show up at the party, Rachel, they're looking at I don't know what they're looking at. It's some sort of scroll or something, and she looks at a symbol, and it's it's a Japanese symbol, and she goes, it means love, and it's it doesn't mean love. It means heart or mind
death,
or something. No, death, hate. No.
Anger.
So
Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to...
That was my gripe with the episode, is that it takes 2 seconds on Google to look up what that symbol means, and it doesn't mean, and they got it wrong. So there you go.
Well. Oh well. Yeah, that's the thing you're upset about.
And that makes perfect sense. We don't need to go into it, but given our backgrounds, it makes perfect sense, and I'm kind of upset by that. Anyway, Stormgren is having a crisis that involves Peretta.
Well, okay, hold up. After the Ouija scene, Corellin decides to go visit Stormgren and provide to him, because, like, there's a weird scene somewhere in the middle where Ellie begs through, like, the toaster, the overlords.
Oh yeah, what the heck was that? I was gonna
Stormgren.
like what exactly were we watching when we witnessed that?
I don't know. I don't know. Okay.
That was the most okay. I was gonna say that was the most Prisoner 2009 scene of this, where you're watching something and you're like, going, what the hell am I even watching? But
she gathers up, like, all her tech in her house, puts it on the couch, turns on the TV to the static channel, and then, like, begs the overlords to help. It's like, what is happening? I feel like my interpretation of the scene where she's talking to her toaster is much more interesting.
Yeah, maybe it's like the. You ever watch that animated movie about, like, a toaster? I don't remember what it's called.
The Brave Little Toaster?
Yeah. Is that what it's called? I don't.
That one?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
What was that about? I just remember.
I don't know. I never watched it.
Oh, I thought you just said he did, but okay.
No, I just knew what the name. No. You'll see when we do the show notes that I never said I did. I just said that I know, like, what it's called.
Anyway, oh yeah, I wanted to mention that, like, I don't think we got, like, a good shot of it last week. It might have been, like, too dark, but, like, Stormgren has a pretty, like, artsy house, you know, like the decorations and the decor and all of that. Because there's a scene that we skipped where he's trying to amend his relationship with Ellie, which is falling apart. So he, like, plans this romantic dinner/lunch, which gets immediately interrupted by the congregation outside. I actually think it's just interrupted by, like, some kids, if I remember correctly. Just playing on his lawn. Or his property, and that's not really a lawn.
Well, Corellin comes down and gives Stormgren, like, this vial. He's like, this is the only vial of this magic liquid that will cure you.
Well, it's done well because it's the same vial that was used last week to cure all the diseases. So as soon as you see
on the other hand, it's not done well. How it just cures Corellin later, but it just happens to also be able to cure bullet wounds.
Exactly. Well, so he's giving this to Stormgren, but Stormgren is he and Ellie are not obviously happy about the sterility that has been induced, which he reveals here.
We should also mention that earlier in the episode, Stormgren is, like, practicing with his shotgun.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Which becomes relevant here because
it's a literal Chekhov's gun.
He's practicing with the shotgun again, and he brings it into the barn when Corellin comes to talk to them. And he puts it down, and then when Ellie comes in, she draws it on Corellin.
Right. Because I think...
But then, like, and then Stormgren's like, hey, it's okay, like, he gave me a vial to cure myself, and she's like, oh, okay, that's okay then. But then Corellin makes the critical error to reveal that he actually made them sterile. It wasn't the spaceship, it was him.
Right, because they've been trying to have a child seemingly for years, and just can't. And then Corellin reveals that he made them sterile, or he made at least Stormgren sterile. I guess they're both Stormgrens, so he made Ricky sterile.
I think he just made Ricky.
Mm-hmm.
Ricky.
yeah.
Sterile.
And then Peretta walks in and just usurps the entire situation. She grabs the gun.
Throws a grenade into the situation.
Right, because Stormgren is actually kind of diffusing things. Again, because he's friends with Corellin. He convinces Ellie to put the gun down and kind of just diffuses the situation, and then Peretta shows up.
And pulls the gun on Corellin.
Yeah, she
is...
Go ahead.
Clearly, I mean, yeah, she's clearly like using Corellin as an analog for the entire Overlord species.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And like we mentioned before, her hang up with the Overlords is that she thinks they're demons. And she shoots. She actually does shoot him.
Yeah, I didn't expect one. I didn't expect Corellin to get shot. Two, I didn't expect him to actually die from getting shot, or like go into cardiac arrest. I thought that he would be like bulletproof or something.
I did too, and that's what like kind of made me go down this line of thinking that one of the things, at least, that they're definitely humanizing the Overlords a lot more than the book seemingly did. Corellin seems to have a lot more human emotion. Definitely, he's showing at least a greater connection with Stormgren. He did in the book. He was friends with Stormgren in the book, but like he's showing it a lot more here. He's susceptible to guns and stuff like this. Mm-hmm. So I think the show is definitely humanizing the Overlords a bit more.
Corellin does explain before getting shot that what's coming for the human race will be harder on those people who have children, and he did this to Ricky as a kindness to spare him the pain that was to come.
Right, that's another reason why it seems like they're kind of humanizing them, is like he's showing like very clearly that he has this emotional connection to Ricky, like this bond of friendship, and he's sparing him, as we know it's coming because we read the book, but he's sparing him like the grief that would come over losing their child if they had one.
Right.
And so Peretta gets sent flying, so she's kind of knocked out for this, but then Stormgren, he uses the vial to revive Corellin.
Yeah, not really clear how this works, but that's
fine. He
just
jabs in his neck and it revives him.
Comes right on back. It's a cure for bullets too, apparently.
Mm-hmm. It's just a cure-all. It just can cure anything, I guess. Unlike the other vial, though, it's not like limitless. It's like the first vial was like the same size, and as soon as he opened it, like disease worldwide was cured. This one is just like a one-use, thing.
Well, Corellin mentions it's like all that they have.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he does when he gives it. When he gives it to Corellin, he says like this is. It's quite difficult to cure things like this, and this is it. This is all we have, just the one dose.
Well, shoot. Oh yeah, I guess that makes sense because Ellie, I believe it's Ellie, it might be Peretta, like urges Stormgren like don't use it on him, like use it on yourself. I think it's probably Ellie. But he doesn't.
And he's instead like, no.
He saves Corellin. That was kind of, I don't know, it was kind of an effective moment where like he saved. Maybe it could have stood a bit more setting up, but like where he's choosing between Corellin and himself, he saves Corellin.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it wasn't like I was in tears over it.
Kind of.
Like, but yeah. What the hell is Stormgren standing on in the poster for this? Looks like he's standing on like a trampoline or something.
A car?
Oh yeah. Oh, it's a tractor. I did. Sorry, I'll put the poster in the show notes. I didn't see like most of what I was looking at. It's a cool poster, actually. Anyway, that's about it. The final scene of the episode is Amy giving birth to Jennifer. As Peretta suicides out the window.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Bit of a harsh way to say that, but yeah.
Well, she, I guess, doesn't want to live, in a world ruled by the overlords. Um, I guess, or a world where like the overlord's main person chooses them over himself. I think that maybe pushed her over the edge, literally, I guess. But God. But she.
Well, she also sees a vision of her
Yes.
mother before she
And this is kind of yeah. So it's is it like kind of implying it wasn't fully her suicide wasn't fully intentional. It was maybe partially intentional, but she's kind of seeing this vision of her mother, and it's almost the way it's done is like before she knows it, she's stepping out the window, like kind of following in her mother's footsteps, semi unintentionally. Maybe that was just my read of it. I don't know.
Maybe. Maybe.
Yeah, I have no idea. I could be wrong about that. But, unlike everything else I say, which is fully correct, but I'm just kidding.
Wow. Wow. All right. Yeah, then the episode ends.
The last thing you see is Jennifer's eyes turn a creepy green.
The same green as the monkeys earlier, might add.
Right. I think if we hadn't read the book or reread it, I don't know what I would have been thinking here. Like, is this some sort of like devolution plan? Are they planning on like reverting humans back along the chain of evolution into monkeys or something?
Revert to monkey.
Oh, yeah, isn't that like a meme?
Yeah, no think. Revert to monkey or something like that.
But no, it's not what's happening here. As far as we know, I guess they could just do a 180 on the plot and just change everything in the final episode. They've already made enough changes as it is. Why not just rewrite the entire finale?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the like ratings per episode on IMDb, these drop off a cliff per episode. It goes from 7.9 to like 7.2 to like 6.2.
Oh man, that final 1 full point rating drop. I mean, I do actually kind of think that this was a more boring overall episode than the first one.
Yeah, I have to agree. I found this episode a little meandering, for lack of a better word. It felt like it really did feel like we needed to get from episode 1 to whatever episode 3 is going to be, and this was the episode to get us there.
Yeah, I think maybe the preoccupation also with religion and Peretta's entire plot line, her arc, I guess, so to speak, was maybe not very interesting. Again,
I mean, they could have done interesting stuff with it. They could have done something very interesting with this religion versus science aspect of the episode, but I don't know. They never really commit to it. They never.
I don't think it even. It's not even necessarily like religion versus science, because one of the more interesting things I think both the show and book do is that like, normally it is, stories like this or just stories in general do like they pit religion versus science, and that's kind of in our culture as well. People talk about like, is science destroying religion and stuff like this. But Childhood's End doesn't really come at it from that angle. It's the overlords have, eradicated. Their presence starts the chain of like eradicating both, like, and as well as I don't even know, like just history, because they don't have it in the show, I believe, but in the book they just have that like that piece of tech that can just show you anything from history.
Yeah, you can see any time, anywhere.
I guess they don't go into it in the book, but I guess it just begs a question, like, how do you know if it's real, right? Like, how do you know if it's true?
Yeah, and they don't dwell on that in the book at all. They don't dwell on the question of like, is what you're seeing actually what happened? Or is it like what the overlords want you to see? They very briefly touch on it by being like, oh yeah, like there were certain locks in place, so we can't look at anything.
Yeah,
from
but that's
history.
like what we're describing is like 3 sentences, and then just move on. But yeah, I don't know. It wasn't too interesting of an episode. I think. Then again, like looking back at the book, I don't think the party was the most interesting part of the book either. Like, I was definitely
No, the party was pretty dull.
yeah, and I was
honestly.
definitely more invested once the stuff with Milo started happening, where he's planning on going to the Overlord world, and then when he finally gets there. So perhaps if that mirrors it in the show, then that'll be a more interesting thing to watch, I guess.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, we say that like it's some sort of like big revelation, but it's like, yeah, no duh. Like someone going to an alien world would be a more interesting thing to experience in a fictional work than just going to a party, no matter how like sci-fi inspired the party is. I had a couple things I wanted to talk about. One of which was that Corellin seems far more human, which I think we already touched on. The other one is just a random like. The credits to this say teleplay by Matthew Graham. I don't think I've heard the word teleplay in anything used like post 1965, except for this. But yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually talked about what I wanted to talk about. So.
Oh, you know what? I actually just remembered this. Because I'm looking at my notes here, but I actually noted the composer and production designer for this to look them up instead of actors. I don't know why, but like I guess I just wanted to delve into that for some reason. So I guess we'll do that as we go into the actors as well. So we actually have a ton to go over here.
I better get started then.
All right.
Well, you have more than me.
True. So I looked up, like we said last week, we didn't look up Milo. I don't even remember why we didn't, but we didn't. So Milo is played by, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, but oh well, Ossie Akile. He's been in a number of things. It looks like he's been acting for the past decade. So just going through a bunch of here. He was in Casualty. He's British, I guess, if it wasn't obvious because he's in Casualty. Victim, which seems like a Casualty maybe knockoff or something.
Wow.
He was in 2012, the 2012 TV series. Misfits, and also Fit. Another pair of seemingly opposites here. He was in the 2016 Legend of Tarzan, which I've never watched. Black Mirror, he was in an episode of that. Hitman 2 as a voice, the video game, yeah.
The video game?
The Feed. Jurassic World Evolution 2, the video game.
Wow, great. Great.
And a bunch of other things, so yeah.
Well, I looked up Yael Stone.
Oh yeah, Yale. I pronounced it as Yale Stone, but I don't know. Yeah, like, who knows?
She plays Peretta. A couple things. Nothing that I recognize. Oh, Orange is the New Black. Deep Water. High Maintenance. All Saints. Jailbirds. That's pretty much everything I recognize. Not a lot of acting credits to go off to begin with either, though.
Well, playing Jake, we have Ashley Zuckerman, the only male to be named Ashley after 1965. I don't know, you don't hear Ashley too much as a male name anymore, although it can be. Anyway, yeah, he's been acting also for the past decade, it seems like. He was in The Pacific, the TV miniseries, Rush, the TV series, Terra Nova, Underbelly. It looks like he's mostly a TV actor. Manhattan. Fear the Walking Dead. I don't know what that is, actually. I guess it's like a spin-off of The Walking Dead.
Yeah, it's a spin-off.
The Code, Designated Survivor. What else here? Lost Symbol. Some. Yeah. Oh. What? Okay. Whatever. Yeah, I had a bunch of other things as well. So that's him.
I looked up Julian McMahon. I don't know. Who played Boyce. Apparently he was Victor Von Doom in the Fantastic Four movies. But he's been in FBI and its 2 spin-offs, FBI International and FBI Most Wanted. Great. Dirk Gently's Detective Agency. He's only credited in this episode, so I guess he's not even going to show up in the next episode.
He was credited with like a guest role in this for some reason. I guess that's why.
Will and Grace, Charmed. That's pretty much everything major there.
Well, we also have Haley Magnus, I guess, playing Amy. She hasn't been in too many things, but looks like she as well has been acting for the past decade. She's been in Slide, Mojave, The Dressmaker. Looks like she's been in a lot of shorts. I don't know what IMDb means by video short, but I guess a short film or something. The Wrong Girl, Like Magic, Cake, Mapleworth Murders, Good Luck with Everything. Yeah. Never heard of any of these.
Yeah, neither have I. But that's everybody that I looked up.
Okay, well, now I guess we're going into more of the crew here. So Charlie, I guess Clouser is how you pronounce his name. He did the soundtrack for this. Let me look up his. I don't know why IMDb separates it like this. Like they have composer and then they have a music department, which I assume would be composer. So he's done. It seems like a lot of sort of well-known things. He composed for American Horror Story, a bunch of the Saw movies, Death Race, if you remember that. Actually, it looks like he composed every Saw movie, including Jigsaw. What else here? American Horror Story X, Teletubbies. I have no idea what that is, but it sounds wild. Oh my god, I was gonna mention this, but I didn't because I felt it would be too big of a distraction from what we were doing. But he composed for the video game Evolve, which I was going to mention because I remember it because of the video game that the guy who played Milo is in, Jurassic World Evolution 2, which came out last year. And I was going to be like, wait a minute, wasn't there like a video game that was kind of like Jurassic Park, where kind of like hunting dinosaurs, and it was called Evolve? And it came out like 5 years ago. Oh my god. Do you remember that?
Everything's connected.
Do you know of that game?
Evolve, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is, right?
Actually,
you're like
never played it, but yeah,
you're hunting dinosaurs.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the people. It's like it was one of those like. It was like an asymmetrical multiplayer game. So one person played the dinosaur, and then the other people played hunters. I don't think it was necessarily like a dinosaur explicitly. It was just like a kaiju, basically.
Oh, gotcha.
So there was an asymmetric aspect. I remember the game dying because it was like heavily unbalanced.
Damn. Anyway, with that rabbit hole now delved into,
closed.
He composed for Numb 3ers 109 episodes. He composed 109 episodes of that show, which seems like it's all of them.
Realistically, he probably just wrote a score for like 5 episodes. He probably just wrote like a couple dozen cues and then just reused them.
And then just cashed his paycheck, yeah. He worked with 9 Inch Nails on a music video.
Okay, all right, that's enough.
Multiple ones, actually. Anyway, we also have production designer Philip Ivey, who he seems like a pretty prolific art director and production designer. He did some work on The Lord of the Rings as an art director, which is good for him. Xena Warrior Princess. What else here? Elysium, District 9. So he's worked with Blomkamp. I think those are, or however the hell you pronounce that guy's name.
Neil Blomkamp, yeah.
Yeah, I think those are two of his movies.
Yeah, they are. Both set in South Africa, interestingly.
Yeah, I think he's from South Africa. Blomkamp, not...
Well, yeah,
Philip
Blomkamp
Ivey.
is.
Philip Ivey is from New Zealand. I'm just reading here. I didn't know that off the top of my head. It kind of seemed like I was saying it off the top of my head. Anyway, yeah, that's him.
All right, well, I have an email to read from Stephen, Childhood's End. Hey guys, I didn't watch Childhood's End, but I ended up watching Children of the Stones. Close enough, right? Right away, I was into how Lynchian it felt with the Stones and people appearing out of nowhere and the ominous crossfades. However, as it progressed, I realized just how poorly paced this series was. We'll probably never watch again, but I'm looking forward to listening to your episodes on it. Recently, Dylan also mentioned Home Sweet Home Alone was released a week before New Year's. It actually came out November 12th. Future Dylan note, I think I actually said like a week ago, thank you very much, but anyway, I wouldn't call it a full-on continuity reboot, as it includes a surprising cameo tying it to earlier films which I enjoyed. I actually consider the sixth installment the best Home Alone film since the first two. I don't understand the low review scores and have probably not disagreed more with the general consensus than with this movie. Anyway, keep up the good work. Cheers, Stephen.
Yeah, regarding Children of the Stones, I mean, I think we mentioned this while we were watching it. In fact, I'm sure we did, but it is basically just like a movie that was chopped up into 22-minute parts.
Yeah. Six parts.
With seemingly no attention paid to where they were cutting them, where they were cutting the end of the episode.
It was also really like an hour-long movie they cut into 22-minute parts because they used like 5 minutes of the previous episode at the beginning of every episode.
Sometimes even more. It felt like almost half the episodes were just recaps.
They wanted you to have the sense of everything repeating like the people in the town do.
Yeah. It does kind of work to that effect in a weird way, but whatever.
Yeah, maybe not intentionally so, but yeah. Yeah, well, thanks for reaching out, Stephen. Would definitely recommend at least reading Childhood's End. We'll see if the TV show sticks the landing next week or not, because I think that's going to... I think if it sticks the landing or not is going to heavily determine whether or not I liked the series overall or not.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I think regardless, probably, maybe this is just going to be like a self-fulfilling prophecy if I say it, but I'm going to anyway. Like, I consider the book to be basically like a masterpiece. It's a pretty commonplace opinion,
yeah, pretty
but
much, yeah, it's a pretty common opinion. Not unusual.
I don't like. No matter how much I end up liking the show, I don't think I'm going to look back and be like, Childhood's End 2015. That was a masterpiece of a miniseries.
I mean, I guess we'll see next week.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get 5 episodes into UFO and be begging to go back to Childhood's End. I don't know.
God, I hope not. If UFO is another Lex situation where we just hate what we're watching, God, I hope not.
Yeah, there's no easy way to bail on UFO considering the 26 episodes we're basically signing up for. I guess we could give up whenever we want.
Yeah, well, we're doing the first 13, so we could, if we actually do hate it, we could just give up after that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
I don't think we will, but...
No, I don't think we will either.
Yeah. You never know, though.
Well... we will know next week, and I guess that's a great segue into leading into the end of this episode. If you'd like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decadavevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on Childhood's End. You can find us on YouTube at Decade of Vegetable, and you can find us anywhere you find the podcast at Inevitable, a classic sci-fi podcast. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. Next time we're going to be finishing Childhood's End, which feels weird to say because we literally just started it, with the children. But until then, the end.